Hey there, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. I'm your host, Alexa, and today we are diving into something that's generating a lot of buzz, but maybe still feels a little mysterious to a lot of people. We are doing a deep dive into the world of peptides. Tiny molecules, big potential. If you've been seeing this word pop up more and more, maybe in discussions about health, recovery, perhaps even skincare, but you're not entirely sure what all the fuss is about, well, you are exactly who this deep dive is for. Our mission today is really to break down the fundamentals of peptides in a way that's simple, clear, and, genuinely interesting without getting totally lost in the jargon. And to guide us through this microscopic world, I am incredibly fortunate to be joined today by our expert. He's a specialist in molecular biology and physiology with well over 15 years of experience. He's worked in academic labs, advised biotech startups, and he just has this amazing talent for making even the most complex scientific ideas accessible and, frankly, exciting. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's a topic I'm really passionate about, so I'm definitely looking forward to breaking it down.
Excellent. Okay, let's just get right to the core of it then. If someone is hearing the word peptide for like the very first time, or maybe they've heard it but just don't have a clear picture, what's the absolute simplest way to define what a peptide is?
Right. That's the essential starting point.
Yeah.
At its most fundamental level, a peptide is just, well, it's a short chain of amino acids. Now, amino acids, you probably know, are the building blocks of all proteins and really of life itself. Think of them as individual units, kind of like letters in an alphabet, or maybe even better, like individual Lego bricks.
Okay, Lego bricks. I can picture that. I like that. So you have these individual bricks, the amino acids, and when they link together, they form a chain. Is that it?
Exactly. They connect end to end to form a chain. Now, if that chain is relatively short, generally defined in biochemistry as containing fewer than, say, about 50 amino acids, we call that chain a peptide. If the chain gets much longer, typically more than 50 amino acids, sometimes hundreds or even thousands, then we call it a protein.
Okay, so if proteins are like, a whole wall or maybe a complex structure built out of those Legos, peptides are more like just a single line of connected bricks, a really short sequence.
That's a very helpful way to visualize it, yeah. Peptides are essentially the smaller versions. They're built from the exact same amino acid units as proteins, just much shorter chains. And this difference in length, it's actually critical because it profoundly influences their properties and, maybe most importantly, what they do in the body.
Okay, hang on. Why does the size make such a big difference in function? How does that work?
Well, think about it. A huge, complex protein structure is often built for these heavy-duty tasks, right? Forming a physical structure like collagen, or catalyzing a complex chemical reaction as an enzyme, or maybe transporting a molecule over a long distance. They are the sort of cellular machinery, the structural girders. Peptides, though, being smaller, are generally more mobile. They can often move around more freely, pass through certain membranes more easily, perhaps, and they interact with very specific targets. They aren't built for bulk or complex mechanical action. They're really built for precision signaling.
Ah, okay, so their job isn't necessarily to do a big job themselves, but maybe to tell something else to do a big job, like sending instructions.
Exactly. That's one of their primary roles. Many peptides function as signaling molecules. They act like these tiny messengers carrying instructions from one part of the body to another, or maybe just from one cell to a neighboring cell. They bind to specific receptors. Think of them like docking stations on a cell's surface, or sometimes even inside the cell. And that binding action is like flipping a switch or sending a command. And depending on the specific peptide and the specific cell it interacts with, that command could be anything from start growing, stop dividing, release this hormone, initiate repair. I mean, countless different instructions.
Wow. So they are naturally occurring then. Our bodies make them, and they act like these incredibly specific messengers.
Yes, absolutely. Our bodies produce a vast and diverse range of peptides constantly. They are completely integral to the functioning of, well, virtually every system within us. We are truly dependent on these tiny messengers for keeping everything coordinated and, running smoothly.
Okay. Mini proteins, body-made, sending very precise messages. Got it. That makes sense. So where exactly are these messengers found? Are they just buzzing around everywhere randomly, or?
Good question. They are indeed found throughout the body, but their distribution is far from random. It's actually highly organized and targeted. You'll find peptides, for instance, in the brain where they function as neurotransmitters or neuromodulators, influencing everything from mood to learning and memory. They're abundant in the skin, playing vital roles in maintaining its integrity, hydration, its healing capacity. They're in muscles, involved in processes of growth and repair after activity, and they are particularly crucial in the gut, regulating digestion, nutrient absorption, and sending those really important signals related to hunger and satiety, feeling full.
So not just in one organ or one system, they're truly distributed across the entire body.
Completely integrated, yeah. They're produced by specialized endocrine glands, like the pituitary or the pancreas, which release peptides as hormones that then travel through the bloodstream to act on distant targets. But importantly, they are also produced locally by cells within tissues, like, say, skin cells or muscle cells, just to send signals to their immediate neighbors. So they coordinate local activities like repair or growth. It's a really complex, multi-layered communication network, operating at both systemic and local levels.
That's incredible. It makes them sound like, well, like you said, messengers, but also maybe like local coordinators,
Mhm.
depending on where they're made.
Yes, that's a great distinction. Some peptides do act systemically, like hormones traveling far and wide. Others are what we call paracrine or autocrine signals, meaning they act only on nearby cells or even back on the cell that produced them, coordinating very specific local responses. They are truly involved in hundreds, probably thousands, of distinct biological processes. They're kind of like the body's built-in multitaskers, managing different operations depending on the specific peptide and, of course, where it is operating.
Multitasking messengers. Wow. That's amazing to think that these tiny molecules are doing so much behind the scenes. And you mentioned they're not just in humans.
That's right. And this is one of the really fascinating parts about them. While our human peptide systems are obviously complex and specialized for us, peptides themselves are incredibly ancient molecular tools. They're used throughout the biological world. You find them in plants, fungi, insects, bacteria, amphibians, you name it. Nature figured out the power of these short amino acid chains a long, long time ago.
Seriously, like my houseplant has peptides doing something important.
Absolutely.
Oh.
Plants use peptides for a whole variety of functions, regulating growth and development, defending against pathogens or, insects that might eat them, or signaling responses to environmental stress like changes in light or water availability.
Yeah.
For example, some plant peptides act as signaling molecules to trigger defense mechanisms when the plant is being attacked by a pest.
Wow. Okay. Plants using peptides for defense. That's
Yeah.
really unexpected. What about other surprising examples? You mentioned frogs.
Yes, the frog one is particularly striking. Certain species of frogs actually secrete peptides through their skin. Now, these peptides can have diverse functions, including antimicrobial properties, basically protecting the frog from infection in its moist environment, or even acting as toxins to deter predators. Some of these frog skin peptides have actually been studied quite a bit for their potential therapeutic properties because they have such potent biological activity.
Peptides for antimicrobial defense on a frog skin. That is genuinely wild. It's hard to even connect that mentally to,
Yeah.
thinking about peptides for human skin repair or
I
something.
know, right? But it really underscores how fundamental the principle is. It's a short sequence of amino acids folded into a specific shape, interacting with some biological target to produce a specific effect. Now, the target and the effect are vastly different between, say, a frog's skin and a human brain. But the underlying molecular tool, the peptide messenger, it's the same basic concept.
So nature has been perfecting the use of these tiny messengers for millions, maybe billions of years across wildly different life forms, and we're just one part of that much larger story.
Exactly. It's a powerful reminder, I think, that many of these sophisticated biochemical mechanisms in our own bodies are variations on themes that evolved eons ago, probably in much simpler organisms. We didn't invent peptide signaling. We inherited it and adapted it into our own complex physiology. It kind of puts our current scientific interest in peptides into a broader, almost humbling biological perspective.
That is absolutely fascinating. Makes you look at a frog differently, that's for sure. All right, so we know what they are, these tiny messengers. We know they are everywhere in us, plants, frogs, you name it. Let's zoom back into the human body now and get a bit more concrete. What are some specific roles they play that listeners might recognize or maybe find particularly interesting?
Okay, let's get specific. One area people might be familiar with, or at least the outcome of it, is skin health. We touched on skin repair briefly. Collagen is the main structural protein in skin, right? Keeps it firm and youthful. But as we age, collagen production naturally slows down and breakdown increases.
Right, and peptides are involved in managing that somehow.
Crucially involved. The body uses specific peptides as signals to tell skin cells, these specialized cells called fibroblasts, when and how to produce more collagen, but also other important things like elastin and hyaluronic acid. These are all key components of a healthy skin structure.
Ah, okay. So when you see skincare products talking about collagen boosting or having peptide power, they're often referring to including peptides that, when you put them on your skin, are supposed to mimic those natural signals and basically tell the skin's own cells to ramp up production of those structural proteins.
Precisely. That's the idea. Applying these signaling peptides provides a message to the skin cells that says something like, okay, time to repair and rebuild.
Hmm.
And this approach is often thought to be more effective than just trying to apply, say, large collagen protein molecules directly, because those large molecules really struggle to penetrate the skin barrier effectively to reach the fibroblasts deep down in the dermis where collagen is actually made. Peptides, being smaller, have a much better chance of getting where they need to go to deliver that message.
That makes perfect sense. So it's about sending the right instruction to the factory, not just dumping raw materials outside the building door.
That's a very good analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another very relevant example, especially today, is appetite and metabolism. Peptides released by our gut and other tissues play a huge role in regulating when we feel hungry and when we feel full or satiated.
Like after a meal, you mean?
Exactly. When you eat, nutrients entering your digestive system trigger the release of various peptides from specialized cells in the lining of your gut. Hormones like GLP-1, that's glucagon like peptide 1, and PYY, peptide YY, are prominent examples. These peptides travel through the bloodstream and interact with receptors in the brain, particularly in areas that control appetite and satiety. They essentially send the signal, okay, food is here, energy is coming in, you can reduce hunger and feel satisfied now.
So peptides are directly involved in telling our brain it's time to put the fork down.
They are key messengers in that really complex feedback loop between the digestive system and the brain, yes. And this is precisely why there's been so much focus recently on developing synthetic peptides that can mimic or enhance the action of these natural appetite-regulating peptides. They're being explored as potential treatments for obesity and type 2 diabetes, leveraging the body's own signaling system to help manage energy balance.
Wow, that is a huge area right now. It's just wild to think that these tiny peptides are literally involved in that fundamental biological process of controlling hunger.
Absolutely critical. And, beyond metabolism and skin, they're heavily involved in tissue repair and recovery more generally. When you experience tissue damage, whether it's from exercise or an injury or just a wound, peptides are part of the complex cascade of events that initiates and coordinates the healing process.
What kinds of things do they actually do in the healing process?
Well, they can do several things. They can attract immune cells to the site to clear debris and fight off infection. They can stimulate the proliferation, the growth of repair cells like fibroblasts or even stem cells. They promote the formation of new blood vessels that's called angiogenesis, which is vital to bring in necessary oxygen and nutrients. And they help remodel the damaged tissue to restore its structure and function. There are specific peptides known to be active in wound healing, muscle repair, even bone regeneration, all acting as signals to guide that complex process.
So they're kind of like the biological equivalent of a project manager on a construction site, coordinating all the different teams and phases of the repair work.
Yes, something like that. Or maybe traffic controllers and construction foremen combined. They help direct the flow of cells and resources to the damaged area, and they trigger the right cellular machinery to get the rebuilding done. It's pretty amazing how specific and powerful their signaling function is, enabling them to influence processes as diverse as, feeling full after a meal, healing a cut, or keeping your skin looking firm.
Yeah, I'm genuinely surprised by the sheer range and significance of their roles, especially given they are just these short chains of amino acids. It really makes you appreciate the elegance of biological design.
It really does. And the more we discover about them, the more we see just how central peptides are to maintaining health and facilitating recovery across the board.
Okay, so let's revisit something we touched on right at the very beginning. You explained that peptides are short chains, under 50 amino acids, and proteins are the longer chains, over 50. Is that size difference the only thing that matters? Or does that size difference fundamentally change their job in the body?
That's a really insightful question, and it absolutely gets to the heart of why we classify them differently in the first place. While the length, that number, is the formal definition, it's absolutely not just some arbitrary cutoff. That difference in size directly dictates their typical roles and how they interact within the biological system.
Okay, so beyond just being a messenger, how does a peptide's role differ from a protein's role in a broader sense? What's the main functional difference?
Well, as we've been discussing, peptides are primarily signaling molecules. Their relatively small size and specific sequence allow them to bind with high specificity, high accuracy to receptors or enzymes, acting as triggers, messengers, or regulators. You can think of them as the commands, the signals, the instructions.
Right. And proteins then?
Proteins, on the other hand, have a much wider repertoire of functions, and their larger size and complex three-dimensional folding enable them to perform tasks that peptides generally cannot. Proteins are the workhorses, the machinery, the structural elements. They form the physical scaffolding of cells and tissues like collagen itself, which is a huge protein. They transport molecules like hemoglobin carrying oxygen in your blood. They catalyze nearly all the chemical reactions in your body as enzymes, like the ones that digest your food. And crucially, proteins often are the receptors that peptides bind to deliver their message.
Oh, that's interesting. So a peptide is the message, and a protein is often the receiver of that message, or maybe the worker that performs the task the message is asking for.
Exactly. That's an excellent way to put it. A peptide might arrive at a cell and bind to a specific protein receptor embedded in the cell surface. That protein receptor, upon receiving the peptide signal, then initiates a whole cascade of events inside the cell, perhaps activating other protein enzymes to perform a particular chemical reaction, or maybe instructing protein machinery to build a new structure. So they really work hand in hand. The peptide gives the instruction, and the proteins carry out or facilitate the necessary response.
Okay, so they are different classes of molecules with really distinct primary roles, even though they're built from the same set of amino acid Legos. Peptides are the precise, mobile signals, and proteins are the larger, more complex tools, structures, and even the targets for those signals.
You've got it. They are both absolutely essential for life, and they function in this highly integrated and interdependent network. The body needs both the specific instructions, the peptides, and the complex machinery and structures to act upon those instructions, the proteins.
That really clarifies the distinction. Thank you. Now, this has all been incredibly helpful foundational knowledge, but I have to ask, why does it feel like peptides are suddenly everywhere? If they've been in our bodies and in nature all along, what's driving this recent, almost explosive surge in public awareness and scientific interest?
That's a very timely question, and you're absolutely right. They've certainly moved into the spotlight lately. There are a few key interconnected factors behind this trend.
Okay, what are they?
Well, one major driver is simply significant advancements in technology. Over the past couple of decades, our ability to identify, sequence, and importantly synthesize peptides has become vastly more sophisticated and also more cost-effective. We've developed powerful tools, things like mass spectrometry and advanced chromatography, to analyze complex biological samples and pinpoint the exact sequence of amino acids in really tiny amounts of peptides.
So it's kind of like we finally got the magnifying glass and the chemical synthesis tools sharp enough to really see and reproduce these tiny molecules accurately.
Precisely. That's a good way to think about it. Before these advances, it was much harder, much more laborious, to isolate individual peptides from the incredibly complex mixture found in a living organism. And it was also difficult to manufacture a specific peptide reliably and in large enough quantities for research or, potential therapeutic use. Now, we can synthesize specific peptide sequences with very high purity right in the lab. This technological leap really opened up a whole new frontier for targeted research and potential applications. We could finally study individual messengers and really understand their specific commands.
That makes a huge difference, I imagine. If you can isolate the specific key, you can see exactly which lock it opens, rather than just fumbling with a whole keyring at once.
Exactly. And as the technology improved, it enabled the second major factor, which is just a rapid expansion of research findings. With the ability to study individual synthetic peptides, researchers could conduct much more focused experiments both in laboratory settings, cell cultures, animal models, and increasingly in human clinical trials.
And what kind of findings were getting all the attention?
Well, findings that demonstrated the potential of specific peptides to influence processes highly relevant to human health and well-being. Studies started showing potential benefits in areas like accelerating recovery from injury, supporting muscle growth or changes in body composition, influencing appetite and body weight, improving skin quality, and even modulating aspects of the immune system. These findings, backed by scientific investigation, started accumulating and getting published in journals, which naturally drew attention from the wider scientific community, from biotech companies looking for new avenues, and eventually filtered down to the public.
Right, so it wasn't just theoretical anymore. There was growing scientific evidence suggesting these molecules could actually have practical applications that people really cared about.
Exactly. It was the convergence of, okay, we can now actually work with these molecules efficiently, and hey, look what the research is showing they might be able to do. That combination really ignited the current buzz. It's rooted in genuine scientific progress.
Okay, that's important to clarify. So it's not just some random health fad then. There's actual science fueling this interest.
Absolutely, there is a strong scientific foundation. However, and this is really crucial, it's also important to maintain a balanced perspective. Because the technology is still relatively new in the grand scheme of things, and the research is progressing so rapidly, there is still a tremendous amount that we are learning. Early research findings, especially those from preclinical studies like in labs or animals, don't always translate perfectly to humans. And even promising human data needs very careful interpretation and replication.
Okay, so just knowing a peptide can influence a biological system in a lab setting isn't the same thing as knowing exactly how it works in a complex human body or how to use it safely and effectively long term.
Precisely. Biological systems are incredibly complex, dynamic, and interconnected. The effects of any given peptide can depend on many variables: the specific dose used, how it's administered, the individual's unique physiology and genetics, their diet, their lifestyle, their overall state of health. It's almost never a simple one-to-one interaction like flipping a light switch. That's why understanding the science and approaching the topic with both excitement and caution is so important right now. Education, like this deep dive, is really key.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's an exciting frontier, definitely, but one that requires a thoughtful, informed approach, not just, jumping on the latest bandwagon.
Couldn't agree more. The increased awareness is generally a good thing, I think, if it leads to better understanding and more informed discussions and decisions.
Okay, so if our bodies make peptides naturally, and they're in nature, can we actually get peptides from outside the body that might have these specific functional effects? Like, for instance, can I just eat certain foods and expect to get specific peptides that will, say, signal my skin to make more collagen or maybe help me feel full faster?
That's a very practical question people often ask.
I
And the answer is, well, yes and no. You absolutely consume peptides through your diet, especially if you eat protein-rich foods. When you eat things like meat, fish, eggs, dairy, legumes, any source of dietary protein, your digestive system gets to work breaking down those large protein molecules.
Right, like doing that chopping process you mentioned earlier in the stomach and intestines.
Exactly. Enzymes in your stomach and intestines hydrolyze or chop the long protein chains into smaller fragments. The primary goal is to break them down into individual amino acids, which are the main units absorbed and used by your body to build its own proteins. But during this digestion process, many short peptide chains are also produced as intermediate fragments, and some of these are absorbed into your bloodstream.
Okay, so our digestive system naturally generates peptides from the protein we eat, and at least some of those get absorbed.
Yes, they do. And some of these dietary peptides have indeed been shown in research to potentially have biological activity.
Hmm.
For example, certain peptides derived from milk proteins like casein or whey have been studied for potential effects on things like satiety signals or maybe even blood pressure regulation. And collagen peptides, which are derived from breaking down collagen protein, are very popular supplements now, and the research is actively exploring whether they provide signaling peptides that can effectively reach tissues like skin or joints.
So we do get peptides from food, and some of them might actually have some effects.
Correct. However, and this is a really critical point when you're thinking about achieving specific, targeted effects, like those seen in research studies, many of the peptides that have very specific signaling functions within the body are actually quite fragile. They can be easily broken down further by the potent enzymes and the highly acidic environment of the digestive system before they can even be absorbed intact and travel through the bloodstream to reach their intended target tissue to exert that specific effect.
Okay, I see the challenge there. So even if a food contains a protein that could theoretically yield a certain beneficial peptide, that peptide might just get completely dismantled into its basic amino acid components during digestion. It might never make it to, say, a skin cell or a muscle cell to deliver its specific message intact.
That's the major hurdle for many functional peptides. Your digestive system is primarily designed to break things down into the most basic building blocks amino acids for absorption and use in building your proteins or for energy. It's not necessarily designed to preserve the specific signaling function of every complex peptide sequence that passes through. So, while dietary peptides certainly contribute to our overall amino acid pool and may offer some generalized benefits, relying on food alone to deliver a specific functional peptide to a target tissue in a reliable, Therapeutic concentration is often very inefficient, or perhaps even impossible for many peptides of interest.
Okay, that clarifies why just eating more chicken or collagen powder won't necessarily give you the precise effects being studied with a specific, often synthetic, research peptide that might be delivered differently.
Precisely. And this inherent challenge is exactly why researchers and the pharmaceutical industry are so focused on developing alternative delivery methods. They need ways to either bypass the harsh digestive environment entirely or somehow protect the peptides from degradation within it.
What kind of alternative delivery methods are we talking about?
Well, traditionally, many therapeutic peptides, especially larger ones, had to be injected either under the skin or into a muscle to ensure they entered the bloodstream intact and could reach their target. Think of insulin, for example. It's a peptide hormone. You can't take it as a pill because it would simply be digested. But for other potential applications, especially for peptides being researched outside of strict medical context, scientists are exploring other routes. Topical application makes sense for skin peptides because the target is right there on the surface. For effects throughout the body, they're investigating things like nasal sprays, transdermal patches that deliver peptides slowly through the skin, or even developing new oral formulations. These might use special coatings or carrier molecules designed to protect the peptide as it passes through the stomach and intestines, allowing for better absorption.
Interesting. So, getting the peptide into your body isn't the whole story. It's also about how it gets in, and crucially, whether it survives the journey intact to reach its intended destination and do its job.
Absolutely. Effective delivery is a huge area of ongoing research and innovation in the peptide field. It's a significant scientific and technical challenge, but overcoming it is really key to unlocking the full potential of these molecules for targeted health support or therapeutic benefit.
Wow, that adds a whole other layer of complexity to understanding how these things might work and why the delivery method really matters.
It really highlights that the biology itself is elegant, but actually getting specific molecules to do precisely what you want them to do within that complex biological system often requires some pretty sophisticated approaches.
All right, this has been incredibly informative. We've covered the basics, where they are, what they do, how they differ from proteins, why there's all this buzz, and the challenges of delivery. Now, as I mentioned earlier, certain specific peptide names seem to pop up repeatedly in discussions online or in health circles, names like BPC 157, TB 500, CJC 1295, melanotanasecond, and maybe tirzepatide. Can you tell us just a little bit about what these specific peptides are and maybe why they've attracted so much attention?
Happy to. And again, it's really worth repeating that each of these is a unique molecule. They have unique amino acid sequences, which means they have distinct potential effects. You really can't lump them all together accurately.
Right, right. Each one is like a different messenger with a totally different command. Got it.
Exactly. So let's start with BPC 157. This is a peptide fragment that was originally isolated from a protein found naturally in the stomach juice of animals. It's called body protection compound.
From stomach acid. That seems like an odd place for something involved in healing elsewhere in the body, doesn't it?
Well, it might seem counterintuitive at first, but if you think about it, the stomach lining itself is exposed to incredibly harsh conditions, strong acid, digestive enzymes, and yet it has remarkable natural healing capabilities to avoid digesting itself. So research into BPC 157 has focused heavily on its potential role in facilitating repair processes throughout the body, not just the gut. Studies have explored its effects on healing various tissues, including muscles, tendons, ligaments, bones, and, yes, particularly the gastrointestinal tract lining itself.
Okay, so the research suggests it might have a broad role in supporting healing in multiple different places.
That has certainly been the focus of much of the research, yes. It's been investigated for its potential to accelerate recovery from various types of injuries, potentially by influencing key healing factors like angiogenesis. That's the formation of new blood vessels, which are crucial for bringing nutrients to a healing site, and also by potentially promoting the survival and migration of cells involved in the repair process. Because of this broad focus on protection and repair, it's often referred to informally in some circles as the body protection compound, or simply a repair peptide.
Got it. So the idea is it might aid the body's natural internal patchwork and recovery systems.
That's the general idea behind the research, yes. Then there's TB 500. This peptide is actually based on, or is a fragment of, a naturally occurring protein called thymosin beta-4. Thymosin beta-4 is found in high concentrations in many tissues throughout the body, especially where active healing or tissue remodeling is occurring, like in wound sites or developing tissues.
Okay, and its potential role. Similar to BPC 157.
The research focus is similar in that it centers on healing and repair, but the molecule itself is different. Research on thymosin beta-4, or synthetic fragments like TB500, has focused on its role in things like cell migration, differentiation, regeneration, and tissue repair. Like BPC-157, it's been studied for its potential to promote healing, perhaps reduce inflammation, and support angiogenesis. It's often associated with research into recovery from injury, particularly musculoskeletal injuries, and sometimes discussed in relation to potentially enhancing performance by supporting overall tissue health and recovery speed.
So, a similar general area of interest tissue repair, but maybe acting through slightly different specific mechanisms or pathways compared to BPC 157?
That's a good way to think about it. Both are being researched for their potential roles in tissue repair and regeneration, but they originate from different natural sources, stomach protein versus thymosin protein, and likely influence slightly different specific pathways or aspects of the overall complex repair process. TB500, for instance, is very strongly linked in research to promoting cell motility and migration, basically helping the necessary repair cells get to where they need to go efficiently.
Okay. Moving on, what about CJC 1295? I feel like I hear that name mentioned in somewhat different contexts, maybe more related to hormones.
You're right, CJC 1295 operates quite differently. It is a synthetic peptide, meaning it's designed and made in a lab. Its mechanism of action is quite distinct from those repair-focused peptides. It's designed specifically to mimic the action of a natural hormone produced in the brain called growth hormone releasing hormone, or GHRH.
Okay, so it's mimicking a hormone. What does GHRH do naturally in the body?
GHRH is produced in a part of the brain called the hypothalamus, and its primary job is to travel a short distance to the pituitary gland, which is like a master endocrine gland located at the base of the brain, and signal it to release growth hormone, GH. So CJC 1295 essentially acts like a potent, longer-lasting version of that natural GHRH signal. It stimulates the pituitary gland to release more of your body's own growth hormone. An important feature often discussed is that it aims to do this in a pulsatile fashion, mimicking the body's natural GH release pattern, but potentially leading to higher overall levels.
Ah, okay, that's a really crucial distinction. So it's not adding growth hormone directly from the outside. It's basically telling your body's own factory to produce and release more of its own.
Precisely. It's a stimulator, or a secretagogue, of endogenous growth hormone secretion. And because natural growth hormone is involved in numerous physiological processes, including muscle growth and repair, fat metabolism, maintaining bone density, immune function, and general recovery, CJC 1295 has been studied and is often discussed in contexts related to potentially influencing body composition changes, enhancing recovery from exercise or injury, and maybe affecting energy levels.
So it's kind of like pressing the on switch or maybe even turning up the dimmer switch on your body's natural growth hormone production process.
That's the intended mechanism, yes, to amplify that natural signaling pathway. Now, moving to a very different type of peptide that's generated a lot of attention, though perhaps initially for less therapeutic reasons, is melanotan II. This is another synthetic peptide.
Okay, melanotan II, what does that one mimic or influence?
Melanotan II is designed to mimic a natural hormone called alpha-melanocyte stimulating hormone, or alpha-MSH. Alpha-MSH is involved in a variety of functions in the body. It can influence appetite, aspects of sexual function, inflammation, and, very significantly, it plays a key role in regulating skin pigmentation.
Okay, like melanin and pigmentation together makes me think. Tanning, is that right?
You're spot on. Melanotan II is probably best known for its potent ability to stimulate melanocytes, which are the specialized cells in the skin responsible for producing melanin, the pigment that gives skin, hair, and eyes their color. This stimulation leads to increased melanin production, which results in increased skin pigmentation or tanning, often even with minimal or sometimes no exposure to UV radiation from the sun.
Wow, okay, that's a very direct and visible effect compared to something potentially subtle like internal tissue repair.
It certainly is. However, it's really important to remember that because the natural hormone alpha-MSH has multiple functions and receptors throughout the body, mimicking its action with a synthetic peptide like melanotan II can also lead to other effects or side effects beyond just skin pigmentation. Things like effects on appetite, nausea, or flushing are commonly reported. It's something anyone considering it needs to be fully aware of.
Right. Sounds like that one definitely requires understanding its full scope of potential effects, not just focusing on the most obvious or desired one.
Absolutely. It's a very good example of how mimicking a natural peptide or hormone can have widespread, sometimes unexpected effects because the original molecule naturally interacts with multiple systems or targets in the body. And finally, perhaps the peptide name most people have heard buzzing around lately, especially in the news and related to metabolic health, is tirzepatide.
Yes, that name is definitely circulating widely right now. What exactly does tirzepatide do?
Tirzepatide is another synthetic peptide, and what makes it particularly noteworthy and effective is its unique dual action. It's designed to mimic the actions of two different natural gut hormones that play crucial roles in regulating blood sugar levels and appetite. Those two hormones are GIP, glucose-dependent insulin-entropic polypeptide, and GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide 1, which we mentioned earlier in the context of satiety signals.
Ah, okay, so it's basically hitting two of those important feel full and manage blood sugar signals that our gut naturally uses, but doing it simultaneously with one molecule.
Precisely. By activating the receptors for both GIP and GLP-1, tirzepatide demonstrates potent effects on lowering blood sugar levels, especially after meals, increasing insulin secretion from the pancreas when blood sugar is high, reducing glucagon secretion, glucagon raises blood sugar, slowing down how quickly the stomach empties, and significantly reducing appetite and food intake. This powerful combination of metabolic effects has made it highly effective, and consequently it's become a major topic, particularly in the treatment of type 2 diabetes and, more recently, approved for significant weight management in individuals with obesity or overweight conditions with related health issues.
That definitely explains why it's been such a hot topic in health news. So, just running through those few examples quickly, DPC 157 and TB 500 focusing on research around repair, CJC 1295 stimulating the body's own growth hormone release, melanotan the second primarily affecting skin pigmentation but with other effects too, and tirzepatide tackling metabolism and appetite through dual hormone mimicry. It really drives home how incredibly diverse the functions of these different peptides can be, even though they're all fundamentally built from the same amino acid blocks.
It truly does. It just underscores that each specific peptide sequence is like a unique molecular key, precisely shaped and designed to fit a particular lock, a specific receptor or pathway within the body's incredibly complex signaling network. Understanding exactly which key you're looking at, what lock it's intended to fit, and what cascade of events happens when that lock is turned, that is absolutely fundamental. There really is no single generic peptide effect.
That is such a crucial point. You absolutely cannot generalize them at all.
Not if you want to understand them accurately, no. Their power, and also their potential complexity, lies precisely in their specificity.
Okay, this has been an absolutely amazing deep dive, really breaking down the world of peptides from the absolute basics right through to these specific examples. If someone is listening to this, maybe they've heard the buzz, they're feeling curious, but perhaps also a little overwhelmed by it all. What are the most important things you hope they take away or really keep in mind as they start to navigate this space?
That's probably the most important question of all, really. First and foremost, please remember that critical point we just discussed. Not all peptides are the same. Don't just hear the word peptide and assume it will magically do something specific for you or for whatever particular goal you might have in mind. Every single peptide has a unique sequence and therefore unique actions and potential effects. Context is absolutely everything.
So step one is do your homework on the specific peptide you're interested in, not just the general class of molecules.
Absolutely. And closely related to that, try to avoid oversimplification. The mechanisms we've touched on today, even when we explain them in relatively simple terms, hopefully reveal that it isn't about, popping a pill or taking a shot and instantly changing just one isolated thing in your body. Peptides interact with incredibly complex, interconnected biological systems. Just because a peptide can influence, say, muscle growth in a specific research model, doesn't automatically mean it's a simple on-off switch for everyone in every circumstance. The body is intricate. There's almost never a true one-size-fits-all solution in biology.
Right. No magic bullets. That's always good advice.
Exactly. And if you are curious about a specific peptide, try to understand the why. Don't just focus solely on what a peptide might supposedly do, but ask why it might do that. What natural signal is it mimicking? Which receptor does it primarily bind to? What is a normal role of that particular signaling pathway in the body? Understanding the basic mechanism, even just at a high level, really helps you evaluate information more critically. It helps you understand not only the potential effects, but also the potential limitations, or maybe even interactions you hadn't considered.
So it's really about cultivating a bit of scientific curiosity yourself, trying to understand the underlying process.
Yes, exactly. Be curious, definitely, but also try to be critical and, frankly, careful. Get your information from trustworthy sources, ones that reference actual scientific research, ideally peer-reviewed studies, not just anecdotes, testimonials, or flashy marketing claims. Be patient in building your understanding. This is a rapidly evolving field, and there's a lot of nuance involved. It's really easy to jump to conclusions based on exciting headlines or forum posts, but digging just a little deeper almost always provides a much more grounded and realistic perspective.
I really appreciate that advice. It feels much more empowering, like being given a map and compass instead of just being told, go that way. And it seems like the more you understand the fundamentals, the better questions you can ask about new peptides or new claims you hear down the line.
You've hit on it perfectly. In a field like this, where discovery is ongoing and information and sometimes misinformation spreads quickly, asking the right questions is incredibly valuable. It helps you discern potentially good information from hype and allows you to make more informed choices based on a real understanding, even a basic one, of the underlying biology involved.
Be curious, be careful, and ask good questions. That feels like a really fantastic framework for anyone starting out on this journey.
I think so too. It's undoubtedly an exciting time in peptide research, and building this kind of foundational knowledge is definitely the best first step for anyone interested.
Well, this has been truly enlightening. You have this incredible gift for making complex science feel not just accessible, but honestly, really exciting. Thank you so much for guiding us through this deep dive into the world of peptides today.
It was my genuine pleasure. I really hope it helps listeners feel a bit more confident and informed as they navigate this fascinating and sometimes confusing topic.
Oh, I have absolutely no doubt it will. And for all of you listening, if you came here today wondering what on earth peptides even are, I sincerely hope this deep dive has given you a solid foundation, maybe clarified some of the buzz you've been hearing, and perhaps even sparked that curiosity. Our expert mentioned the curiosity to keep learning and asking those great questions. And as a final thought for you to maybe chew on before we wrap up, thinking about how incredibly specific and potent these tiny peptide molecules are, acting as the body's own intricate messengers, and given that we're still really only just beginning to fully understand all their diverse roles and figure out the best ways to potentially utilize them, what amazing possibilities might lie ahead for leveraging these natural signaling tools to support human health, recovery, and maybe even potential in ways we can barely imagine today. It's truly a space worth watching. Now, just before we go, a quick but important disclaimer. The Penments products and peptides are not intended to refer to any peptides or products sold by Power Peptides. Products sold are strictly for research purposes and not intended for human consumption. Thank you all so much for tuning in and joining us on this deep dive. If you found this conversation valuable and want to keep exploring complex topics made simple, please make sure you subscribe to The Deep Dive. We have many more fascinating conversations planned for you. Take care, stay curious, and we'll see you next time.